What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Only Pools podcast. I'm TK, your go-to guy for hot takes and pool noodles.
And I'm Brian, owner of AquaServ Pools, here to give you the facts and clean up TK's bad advice.
That's fair.
You down with OPP? Yeah, you know me. You down with OPP? Yeah, you know me. You down with OPP? Yeah, you know me. Dive into discussions, no topics too small. From kiddie pools to water parks, we cover it all. We got pool parties and cannonballs too. If it's about water, we talking to you. Interviews with experts and stories to share. From poolside barbecues to water care. We got tips and tricks to keep your pool right. Listen in the morning or at the late night. You down with OPP? Only Pools Podcast. You down with OPP? Every last homie. Only Pools Podcast. Let's go.
Hey, it's not bad advice. It's creative advice. And speaking of advice today, we're diving into one of the biggest pool debates of all time. Saltwater pools versus chlorine pools. It's like Coke versus Pepsi, but for your backyard.
Exactly. Both have their pros and cons, and today we're going to break it down. TK, do you even know the difference between the two?
Yeah. Saltwater pools are salty, and chlorine pools are chlorine. Chlorine. What do you need to know?
All right, let's start with the basics. A saltwater pool uses a special generator to convert salt into chlorine, so it's not completely chlorine-free. It's just a more natural way to produce it.
So wait, saltwater pools still use chlorine? Mind blown. I thought it was like swimming in the ocean, but in your backyard.
Yeah, that's a common misconception. The big difference is that saltwater pools usually have lower chlorine levels, which means that they're gentler on your skin, your eyes, and even swimsuits.
Okay, point for saltwater. But what about costs? I'm guessing installing one of those fancy saltwater systems isn't cheap.
You're right. Saltwater pools have a higher upfront cost because of the generator, but they're usually cheaper to maintain in the long run since you don't have to buy as many chemicals.
Huh. So it's like an expensive coffee machines to save money on Starbucks. Makes sense. But what about chlorine pools? Are they just for people who love the smell of bleach?
Not exactly. Chlorine pools are great because they're simple, reliable, and have been around forever. They're easy to set up, and if you're working with a pool service, they're straightforward to maintain.
All right, so chlorine is the classic no-frills options, but let's talk about the cons. What's the downside of swimming in a chlorine pool, besides smelling like you just scrubbed a hospital floor?
The main downside is that chlorine can irritate your skin and eyes, especially if the levels aren't balanced. Plus, over time, it can fade swimsuits and even damage your pool liner if you're not careful.
So basically, chlorine is the one friend who's great to hang out with, but they keep ruining your stuff.
Pretty much, but let's not let saltwater off the hook either. Saltwater systems can be harder on your pool equipment like the heater and the pool liner. Salt is corrosive, so it's something to keep in mind.
Wait, so saltwater pools can rust your pool gear? That feels like a betrayal. I thought saltwater was supposed to be the good guy here.
No systems is perfect. It really comes down to what's more important to you. Upfront cost versus long-term maintenance. Sensitivity versus equipment. It's about finding what works for your lifestyle.
Okay, let's do a quick recap for the listeners then. Saltwater pools, gentler on the skin and cheaper to maintain, but more expensive to install and harder on your equipment. Chlorine pools, classic, reliable, and budget-friendly upfront, but harsher on skin and swimsuits. Sounds about right?
You nailed it. And here's my advice. If you're unsure, talk to a pool professional. We can help you figure out what makes sense for you and your budget, your location, and how you plan to use the pool.
And by pool professional, he means himself, because Brian lives for this stuff. All right, Brian, final question. If you could only have one for the rest of your life, saltwater or chlorine?
Oh, that's tough. I'd probably go saltwater though. It's a little more work up front, but I like the lower chemical smell and feel.
Interesting. I go chlorine because, let's be real, I forget to maintain a salt system and my pool would end up looking like a science experiment.
Fair enough. And that's why we have professionals like me to save people like you.
Touche. All right, folks, that's all for today on the Only Pools podcast. Whether you're team saltwater or team chlorine, just keep your pool clean and your cannonballs epic.
And if you need help deciding, call AquaServ Pools. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Well, we'll see you at the desk in 2 seconds.
That's right. Welcome back to The Pool Point, where I tackle the tough topics of the pool world with just enough wit to keep me from diving off the deep end. Today's topic, the age-old argument. But my pool isn't a chlorine pool. Oh boy. This is one that gets me every time. Let's set the scene. I show up to check your saltwater pool, and as I'm running my tests and making my adjustments, you hit me with the confident declaration. I don't use chlorine. It's a saltwater pool. Oh boy. Okay, let's break this down, shall we? A saltwater pool is a chlorine pool. The salt in your pool, it's not just there for flavor. It runs through a magical little device called a salt cell, where it's converted into, drumroll please, chlorine. This isn't sorcery, it's science. Your pool is basically a chemistry set, and the salt is just a middleman. Instead of dumping in chlorine manually, you've got a system that does it for you. It's like ordering groceries online. You're still getting food, you're just skipping the trip to the store. But no, you're not having it. You argue, but it doesn't smell like chlorine, so it's not the same. Well, of course it doesn't smell like chlorine, because it's balanced properly. That chlorine smell you're talking about, that is actually chloramines, which happen when the chlorine reacts with contaminants. Translation, if it smells bad, your pool is dirty. If it doesn't, congrats. Your salt system is doing its job. And here's my favorite part of the argument. You're convinced saltwater pools are more natural. Really? You think dumping 10 bags of salt into your pool and hooking it up to an electronic device is somehow Mother Nature approved? Listen, Karen, the ocean's natural. Your backyard pool is a glorified science experiment. Let me make this crystal clear. A saltwater pool is a chlorine pool. It's just chlorine on autopilot. And hey, I'm not knocking it. It's a great system when it's properly maintained. But here's the thing. Just because you don't see me adding chlorine tablets doesn't mean it's not in there. That's like saying you're not eating sugar because it's already baked into the cake. And trust me, I know about eating cake. And let's not forget the irony here. You went saltwater because you thought it would be low maintenance. But the second that salt cell clogs, corrodes, or stops working, guess who you're calling? That's right, the pool guy. Because whether it's chlorine or saltwater, pools are never set it and forget it, as people like to believe. So let's end this debate once and for all. Saltwater pools are chlorine pools. Only difference is how the chlorine gets in there. You're not swimming in the Dead Sea, my friend. You're swimming in chlorinated water just like everyone else. That's it for the pool point. Until next time, remember, whether it's a salt or straight up chlorine, the key to a clean pool is understanding how it works and not arguing with the pool guy who keeps it running. So until next time, just keep swimming.
You down with OPP? Yeah, you know me. You down with OPP? Yeah, you know me. You down with OPP? Yeah, you know me. Who's down with OPP? Every last homie. You ever go swimming, man? It's so much fun. Now we got a podcast joining everyone, talking about pools, the stories we share, from backyard splashing to Olympic fair. We got chlorine, pH, and filter tips. Keep your pool fresh, avoiding no slips. With hosts so cool and guests so neat, we're dropping pool knowledge that it can't be beat. You down with OPP? Only Pools Podcast. You down with OPP? Only Pools Podcast. You down with OPP? Only Pools Podcast. You down with OPP? Every last homie. Dive into discussions, no topics too small. From kiddie pools to water parks, we cover it all. We got pool parties and cannonballs too. If it's about water, we talking to you. Interviews with experts and stories to share. From poolside barbecues to water care. We got tips and tricks to keep your pool right. Listen in the morning or at the late night. You down with OPP? Only Pools Podcast. You down with OPP? Only Pools Podcast. You down with OPP? Only Pools Podcast. Who's down with OPP? Every last homie. O is for only, the best place to be. P is for pools, come dive in with me. P is for podcast, we talking weekly. Only Pools Podcast, the one and only. Grab your goggles and your floaties too. Tune in to our show, we got stuff for you. Poolside chats to aquatic news. Only Pools Podcast, you can't refuse. We teach you how to clean, how to keep it clear. The best pool stories that you'll ever hear. From summer fun to maintenance prep. Only Pools Podcast, we're your best bet. You down with